Hello, my name's Alison Ward and I work for the Institution of Civil Engineers. I'm going to be talking you through the presentation today about civil engineering as a career. If you've got any questions as we go along, you can save them to the end and then you can pass them to your classroom teacher who can forward them on to me. So, what do civil engineers actually do? Well, normally when I ask that question, I get one response, and that's that we build bridges. And to be fair, some civil engineers do build bridges, but we don't all do it. I certainly have never built a bridge. So if we're not building bridges, what are we doing? Well, we do transport. That can be the design and construction of roads, which is the most obvious one to us. That could be anything from an 8-lane motorway to a single track road with passing places. But it's not just the roads, it's the pavements, the cycle paths, the roundabouts, flyovers, everything associated with road transport. We also do rail transport, so that's from laying the tracks and the embankments, the cuttings, the tunnels, the railway stations, you name it. Air transport, who designs and builds airport terminals, hangars, fuel storage compounds, the runways. And water transport, if you think about docks and harbours and piers, and even canals. We might not use them for goods transport anymore, but we certainly use them for leisure. Now, all of these different forms of transport can involve bridges, or tunnels for that matter, both of which will be designed and built by civil engineers. Generally, the sorts of projects that civil engineers work on are called infrastructure. So that's the stuff that makes our society work the way that we want it to. So that's everything from looking at the power that we use, so making sure that we have sustainable sources of power. This picture's the Hoover Dam in America, but we do have hydroelectric schemes in the UK that we use. Making sure that we've got access to clean water and sanitation, and not everyone in the world has access to that. So civil engineers will work all around the world attempting to make sure that people can be safe and healthy. Keeping people safe is a huge part of our job. This is the Thames flood barrier in London, which if it didn't exist, London would actually flood numerous times a year. Now this is a big flood defence scheme, but you'll find there are much more smaller flood defence schemes all over the countryside. There's probably one near you that you've never noticed before. And civil engineers design and build them to try and keep our communities safe. That could be keeping your house safe, because civil engineers are involved in designing and building that. The businesses that we use and that your families may work in, the places you get your shopping. The buildings that we use as communities, that can be anything from the Scottish Parliament to your local town hall. The buildings that we go to when we're not well, so our hospitals, our health centres, our doctors and dentist surgeries. And the places we go to enjoy ourselves, so that might be watching a football match or some other form of sport like cycling. Civil engineers also work on historic buildings, so maintaining some of our historic landmarks around the country, keeping them safe for future generations. And talking of future generations, we're also working on cutting edge developments. This, for instance, is Hyperloop, which is a transportation system that's being considered. It uses a combination of partial vacuum and magnetic levitation to build an ultra high speed transport system. Now it's very much on the drawing board at the moment, but those are the sorts of things that civil engineers could be working on. And everything that we do, we need to make sure that we're protecting the environment as best as we possibly can. Before any civil engineering project starts, one of the first things we'll do is an environmental impact assessment. We need to make sure that while we are building a project, we protect the environment, and then once we've left, we protect the environment. So we leave it as close as we can to the way we found it, and that it's going to be maintained that way for future generations. It's not just new stuff we build either. We'll also look after existing infrastructure. Not necessarily the historic stuff, but the more recent historic stuff. For instance, this is a picture of the Forth Road Bridge, which had to be closed a number of years ago. It caused traffic chaos in the Edinburgh area, but civil engineers worked night and day, 24 hours a day, to get that bridge reopened as soon as possible to try and minimise the disruption to the public. A large part of what civil engineers are involved in, and ever more so going forward, is tackling the consequences of climate change particularly. Severe weather events are much more common and becoming more common every year, and that can result in flooding, which can also result in landslides and destruction of property, and also unfortunately sometimes in fatalities. So civil engineers are working to try and make sure our infrastructure is as resilient as it can be with the ever-changing weather conditions that climate change is throwing at us. So we constantly need to be looking forward to make sure that we can keep people as safe as possible. We're also involved in trying to find solutions to mitigate climate change. That can be hydroelectric power, which we saw on a previous slide. This is a Scottish hydroelectric power scheme. Or it could be wind generation, trying to find more sustainable forms of energy to keep our society going the way it wants to. We're involved in designing and building better transport systems. So that can be looking at improving public transport systems to try and get less cars on the road. Encouraging people out of vehicles altogether, so building cycle lanes and pedestrian walkways. We're trying to build smarter cities with more intelligent buildings. This is an amazing example of that. This is the Jewel Changi Airport in Singapore. It looks stunning, but it does also provide a practical solution. The waterfall in the centre uses rainfall, and that helps cool the building and also to control the airflow within the building. It's a very energy efficient building. Slightly more simple form of that is putting brise soleil on the outside of a building, so looking at the facade of a building and trying to make that as energy efficient as possible. So you're reducing the heat gain within the building. So civil engineers can work on the design of projects, working in a design office with a consulting civil engineer, and they can also work on the construction of projects out on site with a contracting civil engineer. So two different jobs, but the same qualification that you would do to get to either of those. Not just in the UK, civil engineers can work all over the world and often do. And it's important to remember that we don't work in isolation. We very much work as part of a team, and it's very much an interdisciplinary team. So civil engineers will work with architects, with ecologists, with construction managers, with a whole range of people from a whole range of different backgrounds. And that's one of the most exciting things about it. And it's about bringing benefits to communities. It's about identifying a problem and determining a solution to make people's lives better. And it's important to remember, it's not just maths and physics. A lot of people, when they think of engineering, that's what they think of. And people may have said to you, oh, you've got to be really good at maths and physics to be an engineer. And well, yes, we do use maths and physics. They're two of the tools we use, but they're not the only ones that we use. An engineer needs to be a lot more than that. They need to be creative. They need to be good at working in a team. It's very much about identifying problems and solving them. It's about working together and communicating well and thinking ahead and seeing what the future's going to bring. So there are a lot more skills that you need than just the academic ones that you do at school. It's very much about an engineer as a whole-rounded person. So when you're thinking about your future career, don't just think about the academic subjects. So how do you become a civil engineer? Well, there are lots of different ways you can become a civil engineer. This diagram is my attempt at trying to show you that. Basically, it's showing that you can do lots of different qualifications that ultimately all end up in the same place. So don't think there's just one route that you can take. I'm going to talk you through a few of them. One thing you can do actually while you're still at school is some schools are able to do a foundation apprenticeship in civil engineering, which you do in 5th and 6th year instead of one of your hires. It's normally done in partnership with your local further education college, and you'll do elements of a national certificate as well as a Scottish vocational qualification. Once you've left school, again, there are different routes. You can do a modern apprenticeship in civil engineering. Now, you might have heard of modern apprenticeships. Maybe when you hear that, you think of joiner, electrician, plumber, things like that. But you can do a modern apprenticeship in civil engineering. So that's done while you're at work. You're going to college part of the time, and you will work towards an HNC in civil engineering and again a Scottish vocational qualification. You can also do a graduate apprenticeship in civil engineering. Again, you're working and you're studying at the same time, so you'll maybe go to university one day a week and you'll work on your Bachelor of Engineering degree. Or you can still do full-time or part-time courses at university without doing the apprenticeship side of things, so you can study to do a higher national certificate, a higher national diploma, or a degree. It's really up to you what way you want to do it, but there are lots of different options available for you. It's worth investigating whichever route you choose to take to see if there are scholarships available. Now, the Institution of Civil Engineers, we have Quest scholarships, and those are available no matter which route you choose to take. With those, you usually get a financial contribution, you get networking support, you get access to resources, things like that. So it's always worth checking out if there's a scholarship available. So where can you find out more information? Well, you can look on the Institution of Civil Engineers website at ice.org.uk. What is civil engineering? You'll find all sorts of stuff there. You'll find case studies on engineers, on projects, a lot of things that you might want to find out about. If you're trying to find out information on specific courses or which institutions do courses, you can look at the UCAS website. And obviously there's the My World of Work website, which I'm fairly sure you're all familiar with. If you have any questions at all about any aspect of civil engineering after today's presentation, I'd be more than happy to answer them. So please just pass them to your classroom teacher, who can then forward them on to me, and I'll respond probably by email to your teacher. Thank you very much for listening today, and I hope it's been of some help.